Hello everyone, many thanks for joining us today to take a look at Universal Resource Scheduling for Microsoft Dynamics 365. I'm Warren Butler, Marketing Director at Preact, and I'm delighted to be joined by our pre-sales consultant, Martin Prosser. After the initial introductions, the main focus for this presentation will be a demonstration of the Universal Scheduling capabilities. We'll then touch on how this is licensed and what resource scheduling changes arrive in the October 2018 release cycle. And we'll then wrap up by responding to your questions. By way of a brief introduction to Preact, we're a CRM partner helping small and mid-sized businesses and enterprise teams implement and support Dynamics 365 across its customer engagement apps. Trading since 1993, today we support more than 7,500 Dynamics users across numerous industry sectors. We're one of just 60 partners worldwide included in the prestigious Dynamics Inner Circle, which puts Preact into the top 1% bracket of Microsoft partners. In many instances, we work with our clients through a managed service, which helps them to make continual improvements to their Dynamics system and develop in-house experience. If you're already using Dynamics and looking to do more with the product, please do get in touch and we'll be delighted to discuss your plans and offer advice. Before Martin kicks off the demonstration, I'll start with a brief overview of Universal Resource Scheduling, which is the engine for scheduling any resource within Dynamics 365. This powers the field service and project service apps to book resources and schedule work orders, as well as project tasks, but its capabilities can be applied to many other scenarios. For example, in this presentation, we'll be demonstrating how universal scheduling is used by training providers to book resources who will fulfill course bookings. It's important to note that this isn't just a scheduling tool that's focused on time and availability. As you'll see, it's also very much about finding the best resources for each requirement who possess the relevant skills and experience. And as shown in this graphic, the main schedule board provides a visualization of what everybody is working on and what outstanding jobs need to be scheduled. So let me now bring in Martin, if you just bear with me. I will bring Martin across. Thanks, Martin. It is all yours.
Excellent. Thanks, Warren. I'll just start by, I think it's probably best just to start with the sort of the resource scheduling tab on the sitemap over here. Obviously, we get this at the minute with field service and project service licensing. But what the resource scheduling consists of is a couple of sort of main entities in here, which we're going to sort of start utilizing throughout this sort of demonstration. But just to sort of put a bit more sort of clarity around what they are, we have this resources area in here. Resource areas is going to be typically where you're saying you've got somebody that can fulfill a need. This can be broken down into, accounts, contacts, users. Users typically, your internal staff that are delivering service call outs, training needs, whatever it is that you're trying to schedule in. Accounts will be, your accounts that are in your database, your companies you're working with currently. They might do some work on your behalf. Similar to contacts, it could be that you've got contacts in your database that work for you guys as third parties or whatever else, and they can fulfill some of your needs. So if we just look at, say, Chris Ashen here, Chris obviously is an internal user, so he's one of our employees. And over here we can see, a list of all of the qualifications that he's got in terms of what is he going to carry out for us. So if we've got an electrical need, or if we've got him needing to do a requirement for first aid training, then we know he's the right man for the job because he's qualified in this. Hence why we've got characteristics over here. We can also see down the bottom here that he's got roles, so he's a technician and he's a trainer for us. We can see where he starts his day. Down here we've currently got Chris set to say that he starts from the office. His start location is in the office. We could say he starts from his home, so we can set this to resource address. You can pretty much pick and choose where they start their day, where they end their day. Obviously, this is going to be quite apparent when we start looking at miles traveled, distance, travel time, that sort of thing. So just to sort of put that into context, that sits against the individual resource itself. Those categories and those characteristics, again, they just sit in their own right in here. So the resource skills will be a list of what you just saw there. Skills and certifications. Again, it's quite easy to add to. Just create a new record in Dynamics up here like anything else, and we can add to this. Again, once you've added to this, we can associate this to individuals. So just getting on with the demonstration, just what I'm going to show you is how we would take a case in the system, how we'd work that into sort of what we call a work order, which is part of the field service license. And then we can utilize the booking feature of that, which touches on the resource scheduling in here and brings all of these parameters into play, and then we find the right person for the job. And once I've done that, I'll just show you how we can then also use the resource scheduling for a custom entity which I've created in the system, and how it works in a very similar way to say, well, we need somebody to fulfill this need. So we don't have to just use this with the field service licenses and the field service entities. We can use this for our own bespoke needs, if that makes sense. So just going to go over here to a company called Bowlers PLC. And what we can see, very similar to what hopefully most of you will be familiar with, just an account record, got address information, just down here. We've got a couple of additional sections on here. The main one here being the scheduling section, which is the latitude and longitude. So once we've got account records in our database, we can geocode them. So with the resource scheduling license, we can click geocode on here, look at the postcode, provided it's valid, it will then give us a unique latitude and longitude. Again, if you've got accounts in your system, once we deploy the solution, it will automatically do that for you. So it will geocode all of your existing account records with a lat and a long. And then just down here, there's a few additional bits of information. So a couple of the key things here, billing account, we can see this is linked to a parent account. Could leave this blank if they don't have a billing account and they are the billing account. And obviously over here, territories. I've currently got a couple of territories in the database, Scotland, Wales and England. You could have north, south, east and west. You could have territories based on postcodes if you really need to. Just to show you up here, here's one I made earlier. So here's a case that I created this afternoon. So somebody's phoned in from Bowlers. I believe it was Jake Bowler up here, he's a contact. He's got an issue with a faulty camera. So if we just look at this case. Again, for those of you that are already using case management, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but it's very similar. It's how cases are logged in the system. We've got a process flow at the top here. You can see if I just identify which products this was to do with. I've got a F95 camera in our system, so I'm just going to locate this. If you can just see this process flow, it says additional information here, but based on the product now, we can then go to additional questions. And most people that are using this will do this. Within this section, we're going to identify, there might be some additional questions just from a triaging point of view, because what we don't want to do, send an engineer out on site to visit Bowlers to fix their camera if they haven't, tried resetting. In this scenario, it's just a couple of questions. Wi-Fi outage, no, we haven't. Have we tried resetting the camera? Yes, we have. We've also reset the router. Yes, we've got a power light on. So based on our due diligence, we're quite happy that they've done all of the initial tests, and we do need to send an engineer out. So at this point, we can identify what we call an incident type. We've already predefined this in the background. We've got an incident type called camera down, something that happens quite regular, so we can identify that in here. Click on here, we save this, and at this point, we can now take this basic, somebody's got an issue with something, case, and we can convert this to a work order at the top here. The only thing this will need is this incident type. Without an incident type, it will not work. So the fact that we filled this in, this will pull through. So you can see, successfully created that. We're going to now open this record. So we've got a unique work order number up here. Again, all those parameters that we filled in previous. So the billing accounts come through, the camera down has come through. The fact that it's a camera down, we know that it's a service call. This is already preset in the database. I'm just going to say in this scenario that it's urgent. It's not an emergency, but it's urgent. We need to fulfill this quite quickly. Just go across here to the next stage. And then we can, if we need to, we can fill in some dates. So I'm just going to say, well, I want to schedule somebody in between today and let's just say next week, for example. So let's just put a couple of those parameters in there. And you can see it's managed to just catch up while I've moved across. We've also got a couple of other things in here that we need to look at as well. So based on the fact that it's a camera down, again, we've already preset this. We know a camera down, typically this takes us 2 hours to fix. There are some values added to this based on the products that we might need. Again, just coming down here, we've preset this to say, well, actually 2 hours constitutes because there's 4 things we need to carry out when we're on site, and each one of these takes 30 minutes. So we've added all of these in. And then what we've done is, again, we've got these parameters in here. This is where we now tap into the resource scheduling side. So we can click on this little book icon at the top here. Oh, don't click it. There we go. So this is now going to take us to, as I showed you earlier, we have this what we call schedule board. And what it will do, it will show us the sort of schedule assistant that pops up on the left-hand side. So where we've got this little filters panel on the left, this is using schedule assistant, which is part of the resource scheduling. It's taken into consideration a lot of those parameters. We've got 2 hours. We know that that was preset, so we need to allocate somebody who's got 2 hours of time. We've set this, just again, part of the admin side of this is you can set your default setting. So I've just set it to be 60 and I've set it to be miles. You could set this to be kilometers if you need to, and you can set this to be whatever you want. You can also just override this. You don't have to worry about using the default settings. The time parameters we set on the work order, so the start time and the end time have come through. We know full well we're looking for an engineer that's in this territory area. So in this scenario, it's in England because that's come through from the service account. And also, again, where we set that it was 2 hours that it typically takes a camera down, against camera down, we've set it to say, well, actually, you need to find someone who's got the characteristic or the skill set to be able to deliver electrical training, electrical, services. So it's set in here as electrical, good, because that's what we've set it out. Again, you can change the ratings here manually if you need to. The fact that they've all been pulled in, if we just click on search here now, just push this little filter panel over here so you can see this. It's now been and looked at all of the parameters, so we can see these time slots between the two sort of the key points, the start time and the end time. What it's actually done is it's gone away and looked for all of those engineers. If I just hover over here, you can see Chris Ashton's come up because if I hover over here, we can see he's got good for electrical. So he can fulfill this need. So can a company called Fabrican, they're an account. So can Daniel, he's also an internal user. So you can see all of this information in here. A couple of things that you can do also from here, from this point of view, instant messaging. We can click on here. If we're using Skype for Business or Microsoft Teams, then we can send Chris a quick email to say, are you happy to do this, whatever else. We can email Chris from here. We can also have this linked to Skype for Business, so we could phone them if we're using those features as well. But for now, I'm just going to say, well, actually, I'm happy that Chris can deliver this at 3:39, so it's going to be today. He's 12 miles away, and obviously he's only got 24 minutes travel time, as opposed to Daniel, who's also available today on the 17th. He's a bit further away, so he's 30 miles away, and it's going to take him 45 minutes to get there. So in this scenario, we're probably going to use Chris. The reason this is happening is because, as I showed you earlier on the resources, we know where Chris is starting his day, or he's ending his day, where he is currently. There's a couple of add-ons that we can do to see where they are in real time as well. But it's taking that into consideration, and it's looking at that bowler's latitude and longitude that's already been geocoded on the account record. So this service account in this scenario, and it's pulling all those together to say this is how far away this job is, this requirement is. And then quite simply, just from here, we want to book this out. We can just find this and click book and close here. That will now go away and create us what we call a booking resource booking. And it will take us back to where we were on this work order. Just give this a little refresh. There you go. So now we have this booking in here. So this booking is now linked to this work order and it's in here. And where this would sit, if we just go back to, again, it's all around this sort of resource scheduling section. Click on here, resource bookings. Although we saw that as a one-to-one against that work order, you can see them all in here. So here's a list of all of our bookings as such. And again, you've got a lot of this in here. So you can see durations, miles traveled, anything else. In terms of reporting, you can have some nice fancy reports on this. I've got one here, so we can look at out of all of these, who's doing the most traveling. In this scenario, Richard's done quite a lot of miles this week, or however long this is. Again, you've got all of this information to hand, so you can do whatever reports you need to on this. And if we just go across again, just to show you again, the resource scheduling, we've got this schedule board. Now, it's called a schedule board, but I've had other people refer to this as a group calendar. It's a way of seeing all of your resources in one place. And you can see here, if we just scroll across, this is the one we've just allocated. So Chris Ashton here, he's 8% utilized today. And this is basically looking at his work hours against the individual resource. You set their work hours. It's looking at work hours and time allocated based on his day. When we're looking at this actual sort of booking in here, click on this. You can see all of the details again over on the right hand side. This is fully customized. We can customize this. It's just views in CRM that we can pull in here from the details panel. Vice versa, also in the middle section here as well. The fact that I've pulled in the service account, it's showing on here. The city in this scenario is Windsor. You can see that down here, and it's a camera down. So that's the scenario. That's what we called it. You can pull in other information in here as well. We can configure this. So any of the field data that you have in here against the booking, we can put in here. So miles traveled, distance, estimated travel time, whatever else you need to see in here, postcode, we can pull that in as well. Just to show you over here, this schedule board is really quite useful. Again, you can see you've got these filter criteria over here on the left hand side, like you saw me filtering out earlier. One thing we can do here as well is we can filter out the users that we're seeing in here. So I've clicked on this schedule board over here, and it's showing me 7 of these resources. So we can see down here we've got a list of 7 people showing on this here. So I could change that, and I could just click into here. I could do select resources. Instead of seeing all of these people, I might want to sort of remove that. I might want to remove a couple of these. And, from a personal preference point of view, I might only be working and scheduling information in for, say, 3 of my users. You could split this out into territories. You might just have a view here for, say, all of the people that work in the England territory, whatever else. You can split this out by types as well. So you might want to see all your third parties or just your internal users if you need to. But the key thing here is whoever's here on the right-hand side, when we apply this is who we're going to see down here. So we've now filtered this out, and we're only looking at 3 of these. And this is against this view over here. So this will be specific to this one view, whatever this view is called. If you need to change that, it's quite easy to do. We can click on this little cog just to customize this. We can click Open Tab Settings. And then, you can mess around with this by changing the name of it up here. You can share this to everybody, just have it just for yourself if need be. I won't sort of bore you with all of this, but you can change, the way some of these views and stuff are appearing in the system. So this can be quite tailored to your own needs. And vice versa, you can create additional views. Very similar to how you can create views and charts in Dynamics. It might be that you have another view. So you can click on the little plus here. And you can create a new bespoke view. So when that pops up, okay, you can call this, I'll just leave it as, just call this trainers 2, because I've already got one there called trainers. Again, it's just for me. You can mess around with, your sort of different colors and sort of all of this other stuff that you need to sort of mess around with. Click add. We've now got another view up here, so we can flick between these. Got a new custom view in here. This will now pull in all of my resources because obviously I haven't filtered this out. You can see I've got 12 resources in here. If I now flick over to my other view that I had previous, You can see I've only got 3 of these in here that I'm looking for. Really quite useful if you're looking at different skill sets and just maybe different teams, whatever else you need to sort of mess around with. But the schedule board itself, you're seeing sort of utilization times over here. You're seeing their skill sets just by hovering over them. You can email them, like I said. You can change the way this looks and feels. At the minute, we're looking at the hours view. So we're looking at, this is a time frame here. We scroll across. We can see the hours and times on here. We can change this to say days, just clicking into days here. So we can see it a bit better like that. You can just mess around with this, and then you can look at, again, weeks and months or whatever else you need to do on here. So let's look at weeks. Again, you can just see in here. So there's a few hours there utilised, a few hours there for Richard, and on that 30th, he's got 7 hours that he's utilised for as well. Just go back to the hours view. I prefer the hours view, to be fair. I tend to be working with the days. We can customize this a bit further as well, just by clicking on the cog here. The heights. So, if I just want to make this bigger, personal preferences, I want to have more space to work with, I can change this. If I don't want to have that so big, I can just reduce this again. The sizes, the widths, the columns, you can really sort of mess around with this. If I don't want to see these sort of booking status at the bottom here again, I can hide these. Just click on there and you can see it disappears. If I untick it, obviously then we get to see it. We can show travel time. Might not want to see that, but if we do, then that's where you can see actually he's starting at this time. He's got 41 minutes of travel time to do before he even arrives to this location. Again, how many days do you want to see? So obviously at this point, we're seeing a few days in here. It might be that you only want to see 1 day per page. So now you can see we're only looking at the 17th. So to get to the next day using this hours view, we would just click on here and then look at the 18th. So in terms of how customized this can be very customized. I'm currently looking at this at saying, well, actually show me here from 6 o'clock in the morning. Again, working time, let's just say, well, actually, you might not actually start their day till 9 o'clock, so we can change that. Automatically, that feeds into this, and it's less scrolling. We can make this bigger on the page just by clicking this little pop out. So we've got more space in the browser to look at this schedule board. And that's pretty much it. A couple of other things to sort of just note as well. Obviously, in here, we do have these statuses. So if I just go back to that one that we had, you can see, obviously, this is green. There's a status that sits behind this. This is obviously currently scheduled in. So we can see this was the one that we scheduled in earlier. Richard, sorry for Chris, if I want to change this, I can right click on here, click change status, and I've got a status in here called traveling. He would probably do this from an app, but if you want to just change the statuses on here, if you're the person that's doing the bookings, you can see we've got a status called traveling, and that's red. Again, in terms of really easy to customize, these sit under the resource scheduling section here under booking statuses. So you can see we have a list of all of these in here. As you saw, the one I just picked for traveling, we've got one in here called traveling. And if I click into that, you'll see the colors in red in here. Quite easy to change. You want to change that color, just click into this, change this. If you don't want it to be called traveling, you can call it something else. Vice versa, you could add to this and you can add your own statuses and your own colors. And anything that's in here that's an active booking status will feed into this schedule board that we see on here. So really quite useful when you're looking at group calendars. You can customize your resources in the section here. And the status are quite key just to see, who's fulfilled it, which ones are completed, which ones are in progress, that sort of thing. So you can set your own parameters around that. Just moving away from the schedule board for a second. Obviously, we've gone from a case to a workflow, and we've put it into, we found the relevant person for this. That's very much using field service elements, but we can also utilize this for a custom entity. So I have a custom entity in my system called courses. Just a scenario, you might have your own bespoke entity that you want to schedule time for somebody to fulfill. All I've done in here is I've added in, I've got a requirement, so it's first aid. I need FA training for 10 delegates. So I've got Bowlers PLC. I'm a training provider. Bowlers PLC have phoned me up and said, please can you come and provide training, first aid training for 10 people next month, they said. So let's just go and pick again, start time, 1st of October. Just quickly just do an end time in here. Let's do the 30th. And where is this? Let's just say it's up in Edinburgh. So you can see again, we've now got a territory coming in here as well. Just save this. I've also got the latitude and longitude coming through from bowlers. Again, very similar to how it works out of the box. I've just added this in to my custom entity. So as long as you've got the fields on here, we can do this. What we need to now do is allocate a trainer that can deliver first aid training. And obviously then we want to see when this is physically confirmed. I didn't actually put the allocation. Just going to put in here 6 hours, because it typically, a full day for us delivering first aid training is 6 hours. The fact that we've enabled this now to use the resource scheduling, we get this option to click up book up here like we did earlier. We can click on book, and the pop-up blocker is going to block that, which is great. Let's just try that again. There we go. What this will now do, very similar to what we saw previous, it will load the sort of schedule assistant on the left-hand side. We've already mapped our custom entity fields with the resource requirements of the resource scheduling, so we can see the start time and the end times. There we go. So that's just found itself. If I just pull over the schedule assistant filter capability over here, again, we've got our start point, our end point. The territories also come through for Scotland, and the fact that we put 6 hours on our custom entity that we need to allocate, that's taken all of that into consideration, and it's gone and found us some resources over here. If we needed to add into this the skill sets, they haven't come through, but we can certainly add this in. So we could say first aid training, and we want somebody, it doesn't really matter about their ratings. So we can just say first aid training, again, Scotland and everything else, and we can search for this. So again, it's Richard Smith. Richard Smith's the only user we seem to have that can deliver this capability that's working up and in and around Scotland territories. And like before, we can just click onto one of these, click book and close, and that's going to then go away and create a booking for us, for Richard, for this requirement that we've got. Just close that off, save that, and you can see automatically now, just by adding a few workflows in, we've now populated the trainer on this being Richard, and then obviously we can see the time and date that we scheduled this in for him as well. So the 1st of the 10th, 10 o'clock. Again, we'll see these, so the bookable resource booking against this, like we did earlier, and we saw that against the work order. We've now got this linked to our custom entity in here, and all of the details around this, so the statuses and everything else. So go back onto the schedule board. We'll also now see this in here. So if we just scoot through, what do I have to put it for next month? There we go, 1st of the 10th, Richard Smith. There we go. So we've committed to now fulfilling this, and it's now showing on our schedule board, group calendar, for somebody else to see. One other thing that's quite useful around this as well, if we've got our view for our courses, so what we saw earlier, our course entity, just click up here. I've created a view for this, very similar to before. We can have our own views and stuff down the bottom here. So I could actually say, well, we've got this other training requirement for a first aid course. Again, it's in Edinburgh, it's a workshop. We need to find availability for this. So, currently this doesn't have a trainer. So this view that I've created is just look for all courses that have been scheduled in that we need to allocate a trainer for. So we can do this. What we could do is we could just drop and drag this and stick it up here. We could have already applied our filters to our view up here if we knew that these are only the trainers we're looking for. We can also click down here and click find availability. And all that would do again is it would take all those parameters in that we've got, and it will just add those into the search filters over here for us. So we've got all of those in there. We can see Jake Bowler's now come up based on whatever this first aid course was and where it was in the world. Again, we can just book that just by clicking on here and click book. Just click out, exit out of that search. A couple of other things we can actually do as well on the schedule board. Let's just say, I don't know, Jake phoned in ill one morning and we needed to reschedule. We can just grab this. we can just allocate it to somebody else just by dropping this and moving this around. We can just move these around on the board as easy as you need to. Again, you can see how the colours can be quite powerful in this section. I think that's pretty much most of the resource sort of scheduling side of things. Just going to hand back to Warren now, who I believe is going to then start tackling some of your questions you might have had. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.
Thanks very much, Martin. Just a couple of slides to close out the presentation before we get to your questions. First off, we're often asked which Dynamics licenses are needed to deploy universal resource scheduling. This requires either the field service or project service apps for Dynamics 365 or the customer engagement plan. But as part of the October 2018 update, universal scheduling is available as part of the customer service app, which replaces the deprecated service scheduling feature. The October release cycle also sees some wider enhancements to the capabilities of universal scheduling beyond what we've demonstrated today. And here we've just picked out a few highlights. Using the default functionality that Martin just demonstrated, this has been designed for bookings that are fulfilled by a single resource. But there are many instances where businesses need to schedule multiple resources to carry out a job. So it's great to see the introduction of a new crew scheduling function, and that's going to enable individual resources to be teamed together and scheduled for the same work over a period of time. As well as people, crew definitions will also be able to include equipment and vehicles. Another change sees the added option to schedule jobs at a defined facility, which could be used for work that will be carried out away from a customer's location. So that it could include things like meeting rooms and service bays. There's also an option to define resource pools, which can represent contacts, users, equipment, as well as facilities. Capacity would be established by pool members, which means that in the first instance, a scheduler will be able to simply book jobs to a pool and then leave the job of allocating specific resources to another user, which could be a local manager. And then bringing all of these elements together is multi-resource scheduling, which enables schedulers to mix and match resource groups across pools, equipment, crews, and individual resources, and have these converge at the same time and location. Finally, with capacity scheduling, it's possible to define how much effort each job will demand from a resource. With defined capacity for each resource, schedulers can see who has spare capacity, and even if an individual has been assigned a job, it means that they can be assigned more work if they've got spare capacity available. So it's ideally suited to scenarios where resources are multitasking. We'll be sharing more information about those new features on our blog, so if you don't already, please do sign up to our mailing list to receive updates. We do hope you found this a useful introductory tour of universal resource scheduling in Dynamics 365, and you can see how it would help you improve your own scheduling processes. If you want to take a closer look and find out how this can be developed to fit your own workflows, please do get in touch and we'll be happy to discuss your requirements. We're going to pause for just a few minutes to look at the questions which have come through, but if you are leaving us at this point, many thanks for your time today.